In honor of America's 250th anniversary and Pittsburgh's path to helping shape the nation, tonight we look at the man who helped define our region and would go on to be the father of our country.
Chris DeRose has more on the deeds of the man named George Washington.
His name was George Washington, and before becoming the general, president, and founding father we all know today, Washington was earning his stripes, testing his resolve, and learning from his defeats here in western Pennsylvania. Andrew Masick, the president of the Heinz History Center in Pittsburgh, says Washington in his late teens and early 20s was an ambitious young man looking to distinguish himself.
By the time he was 16 years old, he had taught himself surveying, and he got jobs in the western wilds surveying, taking jobs that older men wouldn't take because they were too hard or too dangerous. And then by the time he was 21, the governor of Virginia, Robert Dinwiddie, came to him and said, "I need someone to go out to the forks of the Ohio and confront the French and tell them that they're trespassing." And that's what got George Washington to Pittsburgh in the first place.
What would transpire between Washington and the French in the region over the course of the next several years would escalate into a global conflict between France and Britain. That conflict is known today by many as the French and Indian War, a war the French say Washington directly started when in May of 1754 he and his men killed the French commander Ensign Jumonville in an ambush near what is today Farmington, Pennsylvania in Fayette County. Less than 2 months later, and just a few miles away from the skirmish with Jumonville and his men, Washington would be defeated by the French at Fort Necessity, and while he was allowed to return with his soldiers to Virginia, he was made to sign a document basically stating that he was responsible for the death of the French leader. The following year, Washington found himself once again defeated at the Battle of the Monongahela, just 10 miles downriver from the French-held Fort Duquesne. Washington survived the battle, but many of his fellow British soldiers did not. General Edward Braddock was mortally wounded during the fighting, and the town that grew up at the site of the battle now bears the general's name, Braddock, Pennsylvania. Then in 1758, this time under the command of British General John Forbes, Colonel Washington once again found himself near Pittsburgh, here at Fort Ligonier. Matthew Galt, the director of education at Fort Ligonier, says that on November 12th of that year, while Colonel George Mercer was in a heated fight with French soldiers some 2 miles away from the fort, Washington rallied a force to help, only to find himself in the middle of another terrible situation.
So Washington, with his troops, are moving through the wilderness. It's dark, it's difficult to see, visibility very low. And suddenly, perhaps someone sees a shadowy figure dart from one tree to another. A shot rings out. The natural instinct is to fire back. And a hot fire ensues. We have a skirmish that's going on. Someone is going to realize that this is not the enemy. The enemy have removed themselves from the field. And what Washington suddenly realizes is the worst possible situation. Colonel Mercer and his men are who they are engaged with now.
The event would go down in history as the Friendly Fire Incident. Washington is said to have raced down the firing line, knocking muskets into the air when he realized what was happening. In all, some 40 militiamen were killed, wounded, or went missing, and Washington would later write that the incident was the most danger he was ever in during his military career. Until recently, the site of the Friendly Fire Incident was unknown, but several years ago, thanks to a group of dedicated historians and archaeologists, the location of the battle was found on private land in Ligonier Township. Though work at the site continues during the summer months, many of the artifacts that have been unearthed are now on permanent display at the Fort Ligonier Museum. Galt says that Washington's trials and tribulations in the region and his actions at things like the Friendly Fire Incident are still being debated and studied, and that the decisions that Washington made, both good and bad, not only helped to shape him, but in turn eventually helped shape the United States as a nation.
So he makes wrong decisions. He makes right decisions. He was a human being. And by learning from those and acknowledging the good and bad, you start to find someone who we can relate with, who young people can relate with. Today that they're able to see, you can make a mistake and you can learn from it.
For KDKA-TV News, I'm Chris DeRose.
Our America 250 Pittsburgh's Path series runs every Friday until the 4th of July, and we hope you're enjoying this ride as we celebrate America's 250th anniversary.